Welcome back to the Finding Purpose podcast. My name is Adam. I just want to thank everybody for their engagement, their listens, their views, and most importantly, their reviews for last month, which was a huge month where we had some inspirational folks come in. Vinny Brusco was on. He was amazing. That was such a powerful episode. If you don't have a chance to listen to any episode of the Finding Purpose podcast yet this year, that's definitely one that I would recommend because it was like super powerful. And as much as we talked about what he did, we talked more about just the way he lives his life and just his mindset, which is so important, especially entering this new year. Today, I'm really lucky to be joined by Alessandra Cortina. She's founder and CEO of the Cortina Law Group based in Westchester. We had a really good discussion. I actually reached out to you because I was drawn to you by your unique Instagram handle, the Lawyerista. And then I dug into the content that you're posting, and I just thought that it was so important to have you here because you emulate a lot of the things that we talk about here. You shared with me that you are Westchester born and you come from a vibrant Italian family. And, entrepreneurship is in your bloodline from your early years where your family, I believe, started in the restaurant industry.
Yes.
So, I'd love to jump into just, some of what we spoke into, and then we'll just kind of branch off from there because I know you have so much to say and so much to offer my audience.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be with you, Adam. This is such an amazing opportunity. And obviously, it's so exciting that you're giving people the platform and the ability to share their story and how they've been impacting other people in our community.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important, especially, a lot of people build their platforms and they have such powerful messages, and providing that safe space where they're able to just speak candidly and talk about their journey and talk about what they overcome and talk about where they're from.
Right.
So often I feel that people are so far removed from those early days that really taught them a lot.
Right.
So I kind of want to jump into that with you.
For sure.
You shared with me that you grew up in a large Italian family.
Yeah. I mean, it's just my brother and I, my mom and my dad, but the family dynamic was a little weird because we were in the restaurant business. So my mom, my dad, my aunt, and my uncle were business partners in this restaurant. So I grew up with my 3 cousins and my brother, and we were basically 5 siblings. There was no separation.
That's awesome. It's so funny because I go to family events and my mom's side's Persian, and I feel like every single event I meet a new cousin, and I'm all right, where'd you come from? But I didn't have that. Our family was based in Philly, and then my immediate family moved to Connecticut. And so we were kind of removed. We saw our cousins and whatnot during holidays, but it wasn't ever, they were immersed in our day to day. What was it like being in that environment? And also during this period of time, you're watching your family establish a business and build a business.
So, I mean, it was not a traditional upbringing, right? It was a little crazy. My parents were always at the restaurant. My mom, my aunt, my dad, and my uncle were always there. And we grew up, we would go to school. We grew up in Eastchester. The restaurant was in Eastchester. I went to Eastchester High School and middle school. And basically my mom would just be like, okay, after school, just walk to the restaurant. And we'd plop our backpacks down and they'd be there, and we'd have lunch and dinner ready and made for us. And for a period of time, while my parents were in transition of buying a home, we lived upstairs. There was an apartment there that they had rented to other people, and then they stopped renting it out, and we lived in this 1-bedroom apartment until my parents got on their feet and they were able to afford a house in Eastchester.
Nice. Was it you? Did you have a sibling?
I do. A younger brother. He's 4 years younger.
So you were the eldest.
Yep.
And what was that like? I feel like the eldest is more responsibilities. And are you and your brother close?
We're close now. When we were growing up, not so much, because I'm 4 years older than him. And in this Italian traditional, we're first generation family, my mom was almost like, you're taking the mom duties also, right? So when we ended up moving from this small little apartment above the restaurant to a house, I would go make his bed, right? Like I would help my mom with these
Nice.
things. She'd be like, and I would say, why can't Marcello just go make his bed? I don't understand. She's like, well, because he doesn't do it right. He's a boy. He doesn't know. Like,
Yeah.
nowadays it's like, what?
Yeah.
But he's an incredible person, human. He's in finance. And like, you would think, how did he become this when he was so like pampered?
Almost,
right? Yeah. And he's the most amazing husband and dad now. So it's crazy. He like does so much.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Were you a bully to him?
Was I a bully?
Yeah.
Yes, I was a bully. But then he would physically beat me up just the way my dad said he would. So I was definitely a bully, the older sister.
That's so funny. And then as time evolved, were you like a little more protective of him?
So protective. But now we're like friends and we see eye to eye, and he's in finance and I'm an attorney, and he also does now business consulting, and he gets it. Like he understands, we have like a really good relationship and friendship.
It's so funny because that's like the same with my sister. She's 14 months older than me. And it was very similar dynamic. But then there was this turning point when I kind of became very protective of her, and it's like almost like I was the older sibling, but it was the same dynamic. She was kind of like a bully to me and we didn't really get along. But as we grew up and worked on our relationship, essentially, like it was just like such a better dynamic.
Yeah.
So like as you're growing up, obviously you're a lawyer. Did you always want to be a lawyer?
Oh my gosh. I had no idea what I wanted to be. So I interned for some lawyer that was in the church that I was growing up, and he needed a babysitter for his 3 girls. And his wife was a stay-at-home mom, lovely family. I still talk to them today. And one day he was like, I need somebody to come answer the phones at the law firm. Can you help? And I was like, sure, I guess. And I was a senior in high school. And in high school, they have that like senior program where you get to go and work somewhere for credits rather than
Really?
a lot of schools in Westchester do that. I forgot the name of it, to be honest with you. But anyway,
like an internship program.
It's an
kind of
internship
thing, yeah.
program where you go out and you get real life experience in your last semester of school. And basically, rather than sitting in a classroom, you get to go out and do however many hours a week.
Nice.
So that's what I did for him. And he was a family lawyer. He still is to this day. And that's where I got the experience from. And from such an early age, I saw that he was successful. I saw that he had a big house. I saw that these are the things like when you're thinking as you're growing up, okay, I can do this. I can be comfortable and have a good life.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm going to be a lawyer. And the worst mistake that I did was go home and tell my mother, my crazy Italian mother, that I wanted to be a lawyer, because she never, ever backed down. She was like, you're going to be a lawyer no matter what. And you're going to go to law school. And there were so many times. And and I don't know, in really traditional Italian households, like there's this little bit of fear of your parents. At least I had that. And I was like, I can't let my mom down. I have to go to law school. I have to be a lawyer. And I think I can do this. This feels powerful. This feels good. And I did it.
That's awesome. I mean, it's not just Italian households. I think it's just like traditional households, because I had that same fear of like my parents as well. But that's cool that you came home, you told her, and she believed in you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's like kind of the flip side of the coin. So as have this, light at the end of the tunnel, what were some of the hurdles that you faced on that path to becoming a lawyer?
Yeah. So there were so many hurdles. One of them was a financial hurdle, right? Law school is very, very expensive.
Where'd you go?
I went to New York Law in Tribeca.
Nice.
And it was a very expensive undertaking. My parents, God bless them, they paid for my entire undergrad education. And I know that a lot of people don't have that, ability. So that was so amazing. And it really helped me financially. But when I got to law school at that point, it was like on me. So I took out a ton of student loans. And at the same time, 2 months into going to law school, met my husband, my now husband. So we had a relationship that started fast. And we basically, I knew I was going to marry this guy. He knew he was going to marry me. And a year later, we got engaged. And
Wow.
yeah. And then a year after that, we bought our house. So I was going through major milestones in my life while I was going to law school. So my journey to becoming an attorney was not just focused on being an attorney. It was establishing a life with a man. It was buying a home. So I was also working at the time. So it was challenging. It was really, really challenging because I was doing so many different things in my life at once.
What was it like going through those milestones while you have all of these other things on your plate? Do you feel like you were able to stop and really just appreciate them for what they were?
No, it was the craziest time of my life. And it felt like a whirlwind. And there are times now when you're saying this to me, like it brings up so much like emotion in my gut because I'm like, as beautiful as those milestones were, they were heavy at times.
Yeah.
You know, I have two very strong Italian families on both sides of me. So it's like my husband's side and my side. And then there were a lot of opinions. There was a lot of input. There was just a lot of family, you know, and us coming from two very traditional Italian families, you know, it was hard for us to find our voice in all of it, even though we were adults. Like I was 27 and he was 30. And I didn't go to law school right out of college. I took 2 or 3 years off. So that also was a challenge because I was working, I was making money. I could have created this amazing career in human resources at Morgan Stanley, but I decided that I was going to fulfill this goal of mine and also a promise I had made to my mom of going to law school. And some people who are listening to this might think like she's crazy. Like,
no, I mean, I think it's your story. I don't think anything's crazy about it. It's just your story.
yeah.
And you said something super powerful though, when you said there were so many voices in the mix, and particularly with people who you know love you and you know whose intentions are good. What was your process with filtering the noise to find your voice?
It's hard. It was so hard because I never felt like I had a voice. And that's why I fight so damn hard now. And I feel like I have such a voice and power and authority over my own life and in my business and as a mother. And, you know, it's sad because I never feel like I had that. I never felt like I had that voice when I was going through all of this. And I had to fight for that. I had to raise my voice to be heard. I had to make threats to my traditional Italian family. Like, you're never going to see me again. I swear, like those kinds of things. Right. And feel like I was insubordinate in order to feel like I need to do this and I need to do it my way.
Yeah.
You know? And plus, like, being the girl and daddy's little girl my whole life, I never went away to school. I went to Manhattanville College and then I commuted down to Tribeca. I mean, you know, that also has this physical connection too for traditional families where it's like, I don't know how to let her go and spread her wings.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely like having you there and like being a part of it, and then the dynamic with your dad and the dynamic with your mom. And it's funny because sometimes I think that, you know, parents always give you advice based on the information that they have and based on their own experiences. Do you think that, you know, some of the voices that were providing you with feedback were just projecting their own fears?
Absolutely. To this day.
Yeah.
Like, as I'm driving here, my mom goes, so what is this? What is this thing that you're doing? I don't understand. I'm like, Mom, you're never going to understand. Well, how's business? How's all the things that you're doing, those contracts you're selling online right now? How's that going? She goes, none of this makes sense. I'm like, okay, doesn't make sense to you, but it's a whole different generation of business. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's that fear, it's that insecurity, it's that worry as a parent. You know, is my kid going to make it? Does she need help? Is she, you know, not telling me everything that I need to know? And I get it because I'm a mom of 2 girls, right? But I also think it's just a different generational mindset.
Absolutely. And I think I've experienced the same thing with my dad, where I explained to him how things are and he doesn't understand it. And one of the things, and a really good example of that was when we were looking at investment properties. And I took him to a bunch of properties and I go, hey, listen, this is a good one. We can convert it to a two family, and it could definitely bring in some passive income for you. I really think that we should move forward with it. And his mindset was, let's go look at 10 other ones first.
Mhm.
And I go, Dad, that's not how it works now. If you're interested in something, you need to either get the process going, get an inspection, do what you got to do, because this is going to be gone tomorrow.
Right.
Some cash offer is going to come in and sweep it up, and there's no chance. He's like, and he goes, when me and your mother were looking at our
Yes.
house, we looked at 50 houses before we finally picked your house. And I'm like, it was a rude awakening for me.
Mhm.
And it was a rude awakening to my friend who's a realtor, who I made him drive all the way out to this place to look at this house. And I realized that my dad, it might not be suited to invest his money in that way, because it's fast now, man.
Yeah.
And that's almost what I'm noticing with that generation, where they were kind of allowed to go at a pace because it was mapped out for them.
Mhm.
Now, with our generation, it's very different, where it's like, if you want it, you kind of got to take it.
Yeah.
And that's a nice pivot into kind of just like your law career, your early law career. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Oh my gosh. So I passed the bar. I took the bar in February of 2016, and I had this rule. It was one and done. If I did not pass, I just wasn't gonna do it ever again. It was
Really?
traumatizing. Oh, the bar prep is traumatizing.
I've
Don't
heard
be a
it is.
lawyer.
Oh,
It is
oh.
absolutely traumatizing. So I got married October of 2015. Then I graduated 6 months early from law school. So my last semester was December of 2015.
You're a really good student, weren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'm also crazy.
No,
So.
it's great. I love it.
So I graduated 6 months early because I also went to school while working in the summer and all the things. So I took the February bar exam in 2016. I found out that I passed May of 2016, and then I got admitted to the bar in October of 2016. So it takes a really long process because you have to like go through
9
all
months
these
process.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was intense. So I did all of that, and then I had to find a job because I'm like, well, what do I do?
I just want to circle back for a second. What was the mindset behind being like one and done?
I never wanted to go through that again. I tell you, I studied like 20 out of 24 hours a day, had no life, didn't see anyone. We lived out of boxes. I had no countertops in this house that we built. My father's a contractor also, in addition to the restaurant business, long story, family of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
He's like a jack of all trades. It's crazy. Like everything he does is like amazing.
Nice.
So he's also a contractor. And then my husband was helping him renovate this home. So when we moved in, there was like nothing. It was still being built, right? So we were still living out of Costco paper plates, napkins, all of the things. And I didn't have the time or the capacity nor the energy to start making this house feel like a home because I was studying for the bar. So we set up a plastic style picnic table in one of the bedrooms, and he put like a rug. This is my husband, and he gave me all the things that I needed in one of the bedrooms to help me feel like this was going to be my study room. And that's what we did. And it was just, I am never going to go through this insanity ever again. And I'm also not going to put this strain on my new marriage ever again. So if I don't pass, like I'm done. I'm over it. I'm going to go back to corporate. I'll make a career out of Morgan Stanley. I'm sure I'll gain great experience and utilize this JD. And I made my mom happy, like whatever, right?
Yeah.
Instead I passed.
Said you passed, which is amazing because that could have drastically changed the trajectory of your life.
Correct.
I still think your family would have pressured you to sit for it again.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure they would have.
Those voices would have came back.
Yeah.
But
Crazy.
that's wild, and that's great. Like how you just surmounted all that pressure and just was able to pass. So you jump into corporate law, and what was that experience like?
So I ended up not going back to corporate. I had left Morgan Stanley because I was told, again, all of the voices, even the corporate people, the corporate attorneys that were in employment law, because they were the people that they were essentially my counterparts in HR. As a human resources generalist, you generally partner with the in-house counsel. Unemployment relation matters, right?
My friend does that for like American Express.
It's amazing. It's a huge niche right now in every corporate America, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 entity. It's an absolute must. Okay. And we'll talk about this, but these are what I instill. These practices are what I instill in small business owners because they actually have no idea about employment relations and how they can get sued easily. Okay. So these are things that I'm working on through the Lawyerista and that platform. But so everyone was saying to me, you have to go and get litigation experience in order to really be in-house counsel at a big Fortune 100 company. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to go be a litigator. And I put my resume out on Monster. What did they use back then? I think it was like Monster.
Monster probably, yeah.
Something like that. And I ended up getting a job for a boutique law firm in White Plains. And I was there. And then Morgan Stanley called me. They said, we have an opportunity for you in human resources, but we know that you're an attorney. So eventually there is an opportunity for you to go in-house. And it was the woman who called me was a former colleague of mine who was then going to be my boss. Yeah. And I loved her. She was amazing. So I was like, yep, this is it. I'm going to do this. So I went back. And then I ended up having my first kid. Okay. So that changed.
So once you had your kid, did you leave Morgan Stanley?
Once I had my kid, I ended up leaving because the corporate life, I was just like, I cried my eyes out when I went back to off from maternity leave. I cried. I was like, why am I leaving my baby 12 hours a day to have someone else raise her? And I was devastated. And I wasn't that kind of woman. I wasn't that kind of mom. And this is not to say that there's something wrong with that, right? Some people just don't even have an option. They have to send their kids to daycare. So I lasted there 3 weeks.
Really?
Mm-hmm. After maternity leave,
Did you like the litigation?
So I
feel like you'd be a killer litigator.
So I've been a litigator. So after that, after I quit, I was like, I'm going to stay home. I'm going to stay home with this new baby for 6 months. How long do you think it lasted?
3?
It was like 3 days.
Really?
I ended up putting my resume out again into the world. And I got another litigation job where I stayed until I ended up opening up my practice 2 years ago.
So litigation. I want to talk a little bit about that because I think you obviously have to have great communication skills.
Yeah.
You also have to have a good ability to read and understand. I don't want to say your opponent, but essentially your opponent. What kind of litigation cases were you dealing with? Mm-hmm. And the skill set that involves, what we already discussed did you bring into that really added tremendous value to your success?
Yeah. I think my experience at Morgan Stanley prepared and paved the way astronomically for my skill set as a litigator because I was already conducting employment relations types of investigations, and they were very much like depositions, right? And that gave me the skill set to have the ability to investigate, look at the evidence, look at the documents, collect different stories from different people, and being open-minded to not only just seeing one side, but everyone's side, right? And as a litigator, that is so important because every detail matters. And you also have to be, in order to be a good litigator, you have to know every argument on every side, and you have to be prepared to have a counter, not only for your position, but for all of your opponents and even your co-defendants. So as a litigator, what I did was I was in insurance defense litigation. So this law firm that I worked at defended policyholders for a major insurance company. And we basically defended policy owners, and it was everyone from dog owners to homeowners to business owners, slip and falls, labor law issues, again, dog bites, again, that would fall under negligence, tort law. So it was like personal injury, but on the defense side.
And you're going up against insurance companies.
No, we defended the insurance companies.
You defended the insurance.
We didn't defend the insurance company. The proper way of saying is that you defend the policyholder.
So the policyholder's dog bites someone else.
Correct.
They're getting sued.
Yep.
You're protecting them.
Yes, I'm protecting the policy, the dog owner.
Yeah, and
through
the interest of
company.
the insurance company.
The insurance company pays for the defense. If it falls within a policy, right, and the insurance says, okay, we're going to cover this because it falls within this policy for our client, essentially, we are now going to pay for the defense of the attorneys, right, in this litigation, in this claim.
Huh.
It's really, it's
so like this is so interesting because like, what does it feel like when you know the policyholder is full of shit, but you are obligated to represent them?
Generally, I could smell it immediately, and they never got away with it. I would call them out. Or I would like conduct my own little mini deposition within my client, and I would say, okay, well, this doesn't really make sense. So let's get down to the bottom of it. What happened?
Yeah.
Right.
What actually happened?
Yeah. What actually happened? In order for me to properly defend you, I need to know what actually happened.
Because at the end of the day, it's also like the integrity of the insurance company as well, where it's like, hey, like they were actually lying or misrepresenting facts or however you want to state it.
It's called perjury.
It's called perjury.
If they ever sign something, if they ever sign an affidavit, that's, and it's so funny. Like people think lawyers are like these big sleazeballs and, money hungry. Like granted, there are people that fall within that, but it's in every industry, right? But there are so many attorneys that have incredible integrity. Like our licenses are heavily scrutinized. We have so many limitations to what we can do with how we practice and the business that we can conduct with other people. And we have such a prestige attached to our names and our licenses. It's like, why even take that risk? It's not, for me, I operate with such a sense of like pride and integrity that I wouldn't let any client jeopardize that.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, those cases probably were few and far between because the insurance company would be like, no, we're not covering this. Like, we're not going to cover the litigation. There was cases that they were like, all right, like they actually have a position. We can defend them. They should fall under the policy. I don't know why they're being sued. And
exactly. More likely than not, we didn't have policyholders that like withheld information from us.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, they send their claims adjuster out there, and they're like,
exactly,
whatever. Like,
exactly. And then
those claims adjusters, they're worse.
Yeah, they're frankly, no joke.
Like, I'd rather deal with the lawyers than the claims adjusters. Those guys are no jokes. So you have this career in litigation, and you have a kid, and how long did you do that until the Lawyerista vision started?
So that happened in 2022. The Lawyerista was never a business. It was just a means as a platform. So it was COVID. It was April of 2020. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening with life? I'm home. My husband is an essential worker. So he was on the front line and in the field. And basically when everyone was home, he was keeping everyone's lights on in New York. So he was out there, he would come home. I would be like, don't come near us. Don't touch us. Stay down there. We have an 18-month-old, and I was home with my daughter all day, every day. Kids? So I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old.
6-year-old and 3-year-old. Yeah. Okay. And so this Lawyerista persona, I want to call it a persona because it is a persona. That's why I was drawn to you and was like, reached out to you. So that's born. And what was your initial vision for it?
Just a platform for women. Like there was just in our community in Westchester, I didn't know who to connect with, what other moms are like me. That's what I felt so alone. Like I'm so ambitious. I've got this job. I'm working my tail off. I've got this little girl with me at home. I'm trying to strike this, at home thing with her, not put anybody over the edge. Right. Who's out there like me, right? So it was just a means of connection.
Yeah.
And that's how it started, really.
I mean, I love that because it's such an important community. There's strong women who are juggling a lot and are wearing multiple hats. And I think it's really important that you create that space for them, especially professional women, because I feel like professional women can be misunderstood, in a sense where it's like, And some of them are very intimidating, frankly. Like they are, I'm not gonna lie, they are. And it's funny because I deal with a lot of professional women here, as a business development officer for the studio, because a lot of them have their podcasts and they launch their platforms. And I've been blessed to really get to know them as just like the whole picture.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important. So, what would you like for people to know about your, like professional women who are also families? Like what is the message that you'd like to?
The message is that there is such power in being a professional working mom. And as a working woman, oh my goodness, like we have just this strategic, crazy way of thinking and looking at things and commanding a room and having a presence, and leading, right? We lead in the home, we can lead in the boardroom, we can lead in the courtroom. And I think it's just, tapping into that power, reminding yourself of who you are. It's not easy. It's this like integration of two very different personas and two different humans in one, like this mom role and this professional woman role that we play, and just figuring out how to marry those two, and they bleed into each other.
What tools have been like essential for you to find that balance? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. I would say it's like my faith and keeping me grounded. That's the number one thing that keeps me grounded and gives me the ability to do what I do. And having like that outlet, also like exercising and having like that physical outlet, right? So it's like a spiritual, emotional, and then a physical outlet. Those are all really important.
It's so true. Let's jump into all of those, because I think that resonates really well with a lot of the conversations that I have in here, because the reason I launched this podcast, because, I think a lot of the times people look for purpose in either material objects or in career or in other people or relationships, when, you talked about, it's like the faith inside of you, and it's the self-care that really allows you to be grounded in the purpose of empowering other women, and to also reassure them that, hey, listen, like this is possible. I'm just like you. But you focus on Alessandra. So talk to me a little bit about those day-to-day habits that you incorporate to just ensure that you are the best version of you each day.
Yeah. So the morning routine is really chaotic, sometimes a little scary. My daughter has to be on a bus at 7:45, and I have, lunches and stuff to make. So what I try and do every morning before they wake up, this doesn't happen all the time, but most of the time, I read scripture. I read my Bible. I go to bed reading my Bible, because I just feel like that puts me at ease. It helps me unwind, and just like mentally and physically, it just calms me down and relaxes me. In the morning, I'm also part of a prayer call with a group of people. A number of them are family members, and then others have expanded into family friends or just connections. Sometimes there's like 13 people on our call, and it's a prayer call. And my cousin Stefano, shout out to him, he leads it. We open up with the scripture, and then he says a really quick prayer. We get all covered in prayer. And it's such a powerful and profound way of starting the day. And you would not even believe the prayer requests and the people that we pray for every single morning. And it just helps me start my day on such a good note. And on the mornings where I skip it because I'm being lazy or I'm just rushing or I'm running late, I feel such a shift.
Off center.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No. So different.
It's so funny because, I feel the same way about faith. I would say I'm more of a spiritual person than a religious person per se. But like leaning into prayer has been something that I've incorporated into my life, particularly over the past 2 years. And, that's just like been such a godsend, frankly. Ironically, it's a godsend, and it's because I think it's understanding that I don't have control over everything.
Yeah.
And it's that surrender.
Amen.
That's super essential for me to be able to take life as it comes to me and not to get too bent out of shape. Has faith always been an underlying part of you and your family?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom was Roman Catholic when she came from Italy. My dad's family, my grandfather was Roman Catholic too. So my grandmother became a born again Christian through this church in the Bronx. It was an Italian American church, and they were like this big community. And it was like right off of Arthur Avenue. That's where they kind of like all settled.
Nice.
Ironically, all the Italians on Arthur Avenue.
Yeah, that's not all about that.
But literally the off the boat ones. So my mom was Roman Catholic, and she said that she just felt like she was longing for something more. She was trying to figure it out, and she was like smoking cigarettes as she's walking by this church, and she hears like what's going on in there, and it sparked her interest. And there were a lot of people in the community that were talking about this place. So one day she went, and my mom was very bold. She had like big hoops, a lot of makeup, bold red lips, long red nails, cigarettes in hand. So she's like, I don't think I can step into this place, you know? And this older woman, kind of like me, right?
Yeah.
That's where I get it from. This older woman stopped her one day and was like, you know, you can just come as you are, because like Jesus loves you regardless of your old red lips and your cigarettes. And she never looked back.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. The way you describe your mom is almost like you.
Yes, except I don't smoke cigarettes.
Except you don't smoke cigarettes. And it's just like a big personality, but lots of love. And, you know, I want to just talk a little bit also about, you know, how you share your faith with your children.
Yeah. So I think for me, I have to do it in little ways, in subtle ways, showing love at home. I always like talk about Jesus. I'll always say things like, you know, mommy loves you. I think you're beautiful. Daddy loves you. You know, we'll say things like that, right? If like she's feeling a little down or a little scared. And then I'll say like, but Jesus is with us. And then they'll ask, well, where is he? Right. So it's hard to explain these things to a 6 and a 3-year-old, but like children are just so innocent that like, you know, the Bible actually says have childlike faith. Their hearts are so open and receptive because they're just so innocent and pure. Whereas we feel like the sense of reservation to faith sometimes because we're like, well, how can I love a God when these really bad things happen in this world, right?
Yeah.
So I'll do things like that. And then we go to church on Sundays as a family, and actually here in Greenwich at Harvest. And then we also at night, I have a children's Bible storybook. So we read like one story a night. And now my older daughter, she's like, Mommy, we can't go to bed. We have to read our Bible. Like we have to read the story. She loves the stories because the way in which these stories are depicted and recounted are so like, it's almost like this adventure, and like, you know, Noah's going on this journey to build this ark. So it's cool. It's cool.
That's awesome. And I think that's like super important. You know, one thing you said is like they have their innocence, and, you know, I feel like every generation is susceptible of losing their innocence sooner than the generation before. And as a parent, with that in mind, knowing just it's inevitable, like the exposure that they're going to have in school, social media, TV, there are certain things that are on TV now that would not have been appropriate for me growing up.
Yeah.
And would definitely not have been appropriate for our parents growing up. And FCC, I don't know what's going on. Like they just keep loosening it up.
Yeah.
So knowing that, I feel like faith can bring them so far, right? What other things do you take from your upbringing that has prepared them to lean on you and lean on the power of example that you provide?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like integrity, morals, being a good person, please, thank you, being polite, understanding how to behave and interact socially with other children, learning to share, being polite, not being a bully. I had an incident this week where I had to get the school involved. My daughter was coming home off the bus, hysterically crying. She was being bullied by a girl a grade older than her. And she utilized the word that I would never utilize in my household.
Your daughter did?
No, not my daughter, the girl who was bullying my daughter. And I was just like, Giovanna, do we ever use these words in this house? And she was like, no, mommy. You know, so I think just setting an example of integrity, leading with kindness, saying nice things. Now, granted, I'm not perfect. Do I yell? I'm Italian. I have a temper. Do I yell at my husband sometimes? Yes. Right? Sometimes he's going to say a lot of times. Do I lose my cool? Like sometimes? Yes, because I'm a human.
Yeah.
Right? But then like, how do we reground? How do we recoup? How do we show our kids that mom just lost it? She's been here with you guys for the last 3 weeks. You know, I shared with you, we've been sick on and off for 3 weeks. It's been heavy. It's like, okay, so she needs to cool down. She needs to regroup. Now, how do we apologize? How do we say, you know what? I lost my temper. I shouldn't have gotten like that. Now let's learn from our mistakes so that we don't do that next time.
I love that. And it's so important to just be that way as a parent. You know, as you meet other women like you who have families and who are professionals through your work with Lawyerista, what services do you provide? Because to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure. I'm being honest. Like, what
I do?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I know I know your history, and I know but yes.
So it's funny that you say that. One of my goals for 2025 on the Lawyerista is to have better messaging. So like, I kind of feel like you've confirmed that. Thanks. You know what's funny, because like I feel I just touched on this about my dad, like the jack of all trades, right? I'm like the Jill of all trades. It's weird. I have his like entrepreneur spirit, whereas my mom is more like safety, like in a box, and that's the way my brother is.
That's so funny.
I mean, granted, he's in finance, he makes crazy money, right? But like, that's safety for him, you know, like being in corporate is cool. For me, I'm like, I just would rather make my money being a crazy person and all over the place, because I have so many interests. So I think with the Lawyerista, I service women in business, period. Okay. Obviously, I service all business owners, but my niche and my target client is a female in business. And essentially, I help them on the legal side. I help them from starting to scaling to hiring employees, contracts, lease negotiations. It's like your entire life of a business. Okay. But I also do networking events for women in business because I'm so passionate about that. And I'm passionate about building a community of women in business that's a very powerful and impactful one. And a lot of those individuals that come to my events are mothers in business, where we can relate to each other, network with each other, and learn from each other.
And collaborate with each other, 100%. Which is super important.
I just hosted an event at the Sale House, Sean and his partners. And it was phenomenal. It was December 4th.
Was that the one Tony spoke at?
Yes.
Okay.
It was phenomenal. And I mean, we're now almost 2 months after that event, and people still message me saying, you have no idea the collaborations that have come out of your event. And it's not because it was my event. It's just the right people were in the room, right? I didn't do anything so remarkable. I just brought people together, and people are collaborating in business. People are collaborating on social media, like the exposure and the visibility, the referrals. It's just been incredible. So I think that the Lawyerista just embodies a community with various different services.
I love that. And, you know, jumping into the entrepreneurship part, right? And then having the background corporate and also in litigation, it's a contrast.
Yeah.
What skills were you like, man, I got to pick this up ASAP right now, because, you know, in order for my business to grow and for my platform to grow, that maybe you were not equipped with through your career as in structured environments?
So that is such an amazing question, because it literally just happened in my life.
Really?
Yes. So I knew that if I was going to really market myself as a business attorney for any entrepreneur, I needed to expand my practice area, and it was coming with a very hefty price tag. So I invested in a course for lawyers that was created by a woman who is a very famous trademark attorney. And trademarking allows a lawyer, even just licensed in one state, to practice federally for anybody. So in all 50 states. So I knew if I wanted to grow exponentially, I needed this service, but I have been so afraid to make this financial investment. It's taken me 3 years to finally do it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, and I said to my husband, I was like, babe, if I don't practice what I preach, I'm like a hypocrite. I'm a phony. I'm a fake. He's like, just do it already. What's wrong with you? You know? And the return on my investment has been huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a CLE course, which is continuing legal education. So not only am I getting CLE credits, because as an attorney, I have to do this every year, every 2 years, and I have to report that to the New York State Bar Association. I'm also building a trade in my business that I didn't have, and now offering it in a menu of services for business owners that's so comprehensive and just makes sense.
That's awesome. So in order for you to do what you're doing, you have to have an active law license.
Oh, yeah.
And okay.
You have to be a licensed attorney to practice law in New York or anywhere.
Because you are still at some points representing some of your clients in court.
So legal representation isn't just in court.
Yeah.
That is a component of it. So that's part of litigation or whatever. Family law, matrimonial, criminal, whatever it might be. But if you are going to represent somebody, even if you're buying a house, if I'm going to draft a contract or do a closing for someone, I have to be licensed. I have to be a licensed attorney.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. I was just making sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so that was one thing that you're like, I absolutely need. Were there any like skill sets that you were like, hey, like I know for me, when I first got into it, like into just like creating a brand for myself and, obviously with this podcast, it was the managing of the social media was a little bit
rough.
Also it was like just the marketing part, and for me, all right. So we're both friends with Tony.
Yeah.
All right. And Tony's always like, post as often as you want. Post. And, one of the things, and I had a conversation with Tony, we went to Hinoki and we were sitting there and we're talking, me and him, just like go to get sushi. And he was like, bro, you got to get more comfortable with talking to a camera. You got to get more comfortable in front of a camera.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, dude, I'll try. And my heart wasn't in it. You know what I mean? Like I was very nervous in front of the camera. I always felt uncomfortable just like looking at a camera and just like talking to it. And so that was a big reason why I launched this podcast, because I was like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to bring guests on. I'm going to have conversations with them. And if I say something cool and powerful and inspirational or whatever that aligns with my brand, I'll just clip that up. And that's me talking to a camera. That just grew into me just kind of falling in love with like meeting people and hearing their stories and hearing how they got to where they were. So that's kind of how I overcome that. How are you in that category? Because it's so funny because every time I tell someone, oh, like your social media looks great, they're always like, eh. And I'm like,
I know, that's how I feel.
Is that how you feel?
Oh my gosh, of course. So, I have a really love-hate relationship with my Instagram. There are moments where I'm like, yes, this is amazing. And it brings me a lot of business. And I have so much connection. And it's like, I'm able to have this career and then like raise my daughters and have this flexibility. And then I'm like, I hate it.
Yeah.
It is exhausting. I'm getting nowhere. I'm nowhere near the amount of followers that I need or this or that. And then I get like shallow and then I have to like bring myself up again and back to reality. And you're like, you're not here for the followers, lady. Yeah. Like you're here for business and you're here to make an impact.
Yeah.
Right. There are so many successful businesses that I know that have like 400 followers. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is crazy. For me, I got comfortable speaking because it's just, I don't know if it's this innate thing that I have or my personality or because I did it so much in corporate and then I did it as a litigator. And then I was like, going in front of a judge at such an early age and like feeling those butterflies and wanting to vomit. No, I wasn't fearless.
You weren't fearless.
Oh my gosh. There were moments where I would like run to the bathroom, put cold water on my face in court and like want to vomit. Because remember, I was literally going up against sharks when I got this litigation job after I had left maternity leave. It was baptism by fire. So the first day on the job, I was in Kings County Supreme Court in Brooklyn and I was arguing a motion. I had no idea what the law was. And then the senior partner was like, what do you mean you don't know what the law is? Read the paper that's in front of you. And I'm like, oh my God, that's what all that stuff is. And like,
Yeah.
I just didn't know. But if I didn't have that experience, I wouldn't be
Well, I feel
able to
like
do what I'm
that's
doing.
kind of been an underlying theme of your story, baptism by fire. Like,
Yeah,
you,
unfortunately.
well, unfortunately, but also like, I mean, you talked about like going into law school and you were also buying a house, getting married, getting engaged, like the whole nine. I mean, if that's not baptism by fire, I don't know what is.
I know.
So like
You're right.
metaphorically, that's kind of prepared you for these trying moments where it's like, hey, this is a test and maybe I'll go puke in the bathroom, but I'm going to come back and kill it.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely those moments where, okay, get it out, go puke, and then come back and kill it. You know?
That's so great.
And it's funny because when I do these events for women in business, there was my very first one I felt almost like that because I was speaking in front of like 60 women and I'm like, I can't believe that 60 women came out for my event, and this was in 2023 and then, or 2022 rather, I'm sorry. And now when I just did this last one in December, it was just cool. Like this is my thing. I love this.
I think that's something where when you're in the events game, it's different. Like I host events also, and that first event is scary.
Yeah.
It's so scary. And I remember the first time I hosted an event, everything was set up, candles, like the caterers were there. And I'm standing in this room with just a couple of friends who helped me set it up. And there's this impending thought that no one's going to show up.
Oh.
And it haunts you. And then one person shows up and you're like, hey.
Yeah.
And then another person shows up. And all that fear that I had was so meaningless and useless.
Right.
And now it's kind of like, I still kind of have that. But then when they do, I'm like, yeah, it feels good.
Right.
But, what's more important to me is that I'm bringing people together. And, whether it's for a cause or whether it's just because they're like-minded and share the same values, or they are, have ambitions and they can collaborate. If I can foster relationships, then I'm adding value to people's lives. So, I want to talk about like the value of relationships and mentorship and whatnot. And what were some important relationships throughout your career, your story, that you lean on? Obviously you talked about your mother, being just like, I don't know, like the way you're describing her, like, it seems like she's a powerful woman who you've grown up to emulate a lot of the things that she does.
It definitely leans on her a lot. I've had some Christian mentors, older, like very wise women, pastoral staff members, obviously, that I've really leaned on because it translates to every facet of your life, even including business. So that is like the spiritual component of mentorship. And then there are business owners that I have said to myself, like, those are people that I want to emulate. They're slightly older than me. I'm 36. So these people would be like 42, 43 plus.
Yeah. Is there anyone in particular?
My sister-in-law, Luciana Howard, and ironically, her best friend who became one of my closest friends, Daniela Saran. And these two women have built empires and they're incredible. They have had different navigations in their career. One had a very intense career change from commercial real estate to somatic practitioner, which is like a body movement therapist. Crazy. She has her own story, brilliant individual. And then Daniela too, who runs a massive female-owned construction business in Manhattan.
I love that.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the only like in her niched area. And it's just these people I have really looked up to, and I do often confide in them for some guidance. Granted, there are times, and I'm going to be honest with you, like they'll give me their opinion on things where I'm like, I appreciate that, but that's not the direction I see. Like everyone is going to have an opinion. Everyone is going to look at your situation and say, well, this is what I think you should do, or this is what I would, change up a little bit. But what I'm learning, finding my own voice, is you can take opinions and you can listen. You can think about like what they're saying, but then you don't have to follow. Like you don't have to feel that pressure of, well, maybe she is right. Maybe that is how I have to do it. I would be exponentially more successful if I stopped listening to other people's opinions. And now I feel like I am in this pivotal moment in my life and in my career where I no longer take people's opinions to heart or feel that pressure that I need to do what people think I should do. And it's made a world of a difference.
Well, I think that's dead on, because also more often than not, we ask for too many opinions.
Oh yeah.
Or people are offering opinions, whatever it is. We have a lot of voices, like you said. And my rule of thumb is I always go to people who've done what I want to do before me.
Yes.
Like, that's the person who I want to emulate, whether it's in business, whether it's really just the way they're navigating a relationship or whatever. I go after the person who's doing what I want to be doing and is doing it the way that I'd want to be doing. Because I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who are podcasting, right? And I can ask every single podcaster, like, how do you ask questions or what are you doing? But at the end of the day, like I have my mentors in the podcasting space that resonate with the message that I'm trying to get out. But in business, same thing. I watch people who scale their businesses and I call them up, and it keeps the advice streamlined for me.
Yes.
Because you're right. So many times, and then you get advice that you don't is bad advice.
Yeah, it's bad advice. And sometimes it's unsolicited where you're like, I never even asked you what you thought. So why are you offering me your opinion?
Yeah. And
No offense.
It's so true. And you just gotta, and then you're a good person and you don't want to disappoint that person, or you know that, all these other things. But at the end of the day, like if you disappoint that person, or they're not going to be friends with you, or they're not going to do business with you because you didn't take their advice, then how valuable of a relationship was it to begin with, So I love that because, it's important to follow your gut in a lot of situations. And there was a long period of time where I wasn't, and I was seeking the opinions of others, all the while kind of sidetracking me off my purpose.
Oh my goodness. 100%. 100%. If I would have just put my head down 3 years ago, I would have already been at like this place 3 years ago. Right. And God only knows where I would, but then I think like, sometimes you have to go through the trial in order to be refined into the person that you are today, for you to step into your purpose that God has for you. Because maybe 3 years ago, you wouldn't have been ready. Maybe there was something within you that you wouldn't have been ready for to receive all of that or to handle all of that.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like how I look at it with my life. And I say sometimes like, oh, I wish I would have done this earlier, or I wish I would have done this way. But then I'm saying to myself, I wouldn't have been ready for it probably, or maybe wouldn't have been wise enough or mature enough for that, So that's how I look at it.
I do this men's group, and I heard something brilliant yesterday, and he was like, God has 3 answers for you. Yes, not yet, or I have a different plan for you.
Right.
And when you
I love that.
think about it from that component, everything happened for a reason. Like it's not my plan. And even every test that comes my way, before I always used to either fight it or impose my will or try to change it into what I wanted it to be, but rather than just accept it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge part of this entrepreneurial journey as well. It's this accepting what's coming at you and understanding, all right, like where can I add value to this situation? Where can I add value to this relationship? Where can I add value to this transaction? Whatever it is, rather than, addition by subtraction or addition by manipulation or, whatever, all of these things. So I love how you've leaned into integrity a lot. And I want to talk to you about what that means to you when it comes to business.
So for me, I lead with integrity in my business and I'm honest with my clients. I also don't take cases that I don't feel is a viable case. There are lawyers out there or business people. Let's just not just shout out lawyers, but there are people in business that are like, I'm just going to take anything just to take it because I need this money. Right. I don't work from that kind of a place. If I sense that I am not on the same page with somebody in a consultation, there is no way. If I sense, because you have to lean into your gut.
Yeah.
Your gut is just this crazy thing where you can, like, your red flags go off when you talk to somebody. You know what I mean?
It's God talking to you.
Yes, it's God. It's the Lord. And this happened to me a few weeks ago where I had a consultation with somebody that was referred to me by someone that I know well. And I wanted to help this person because I knew where the referral was coming from. But just having 2 conversations with this person, I was like, oh no, I don't trust this individual. Oh no, because again, my lawyer flag went up, my gut went off, and all the questions that I was asking, it was like an evasion of answering it. And I just knew. And in my earlier years as an attorney, maybe I would have taken it and just ran the risk of like, okay, let's just see how it goes. It could be potentially a good money, good case. Now it's like, that is just not going to serve me when I can take on 3 more matters that will make up for that.
Yeah.
So I lead with integrity. I'm very honest. I give honest consultations and honest feedback. I do case assessments when people call and I'm like, I just don't see it. Maybe you should get a second opinion, and I never guarantee outcomes or results.
I love that. I mean, it sounds like just like freedom in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Where you have the discretion to really just choose who you want to work with, choose the energy that you want to be around and just partner with the right people. And I love that, like, despite the fact that there was a friend who referred you, you're like, listen, like, there's bad vibes, just bad vibes. And I'm like one of those guys who's like very much the same way where I'm not feeling that. It's really easy to tell if someone's being genuine.
Yeah.
It's really easy to tell if someone's like being authentic and not lying and has good intention. And I think that's really comes from like within, where it's like, if you're living intentionally and you're living in a sort of, you're going to reject that. So I want to talk a little bit about purpose for you. And what does the word purpose mean for you? And do you feel like you're living in your purpose now?
So the word purpose means, for me, it is doing something for something bigger than yourself. Achieving something, working towards something that is bigger than yourself. And we're not talking about materialism, right? Like, let's be honest. There are some people that are like, my purpose is that, like, I want to live in Greenwich and drive a Range Rover and have a $10 million house. That's not my purpose.
That's living well. That's not living purposefully.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And hey, when you live purposefully, sometimes that comes with it.
Usually it does.
So we can't forget that, because those are also those are blessings. And I am not of like a shameful mindset for materialism. I don't believe in that. I like the finer things in life.
Yeah.
But I do.
Yeah, I do too.
Like, I'm not going to lie, but my husband says I have, what is it called? Champagne taste beer pockets.
Yeah. Champagne taste of beer money.
Yep. But seriously, I just think that having a purpose is doing something, living in a way that's just bigger than yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think when you live purposefully, it entails giving back.
Yeah.
Sure. Like you're doing, like empowering, women.
Yeah.
Like I love that. Do you think that purpose, like on your journey, when was there a time where you questioned your purpose, or was there a time?
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes, there was multiple times up until maybe like November of 2024. Literally the last 3-4 months. I had been consulting as of counsel for various law firms to make an income,
Yeah.
like, hello, this is not like, to make an income. And I was doing of counsel work. So basically it's like contractor work where there's a law firm that needs assistance on a project, or there's a law firm that might need you to jump in on a trial. There's a law firm that might need help with paper drafting of documents, discovery process, because they don't want to hire an employee. So it's cheaper to basically contract it out. And I was doing several projects, and I was working for one in particular as a contractor. And it just started becoming like feeling like an employment. And I saw my business taking the back burner. And I saw my Instagram and my community sliding back. And I was like, oh no. My husband noticed it. He was like, this is starting to feel like you're going to an office now all the time. And we've got this babysitter now all the time too, which he's supportive of what I do. But his point was, you've built Cortina Law Group. What the hell are you doing with it?
Yeah.
Why are you going to basically work for someone else? And then I started becoming miserable. And although I was like making money, I was miserable because I was doing that like litigation stuff that I didn't want to do anymore. Mm-hmm. So it was November. We went for my mom's 70th birthday to their home in Florida. Time to be like alone with my family and my husband and my kids. I came back. I cut the cord from every law firm that I was doing work with. And I said, I don't care if I make $0 the next 6 months. I am committing wholeheartedly again to the Cortina Law Group. And in just 45 days, it's been a massive transformation.
I love that. And it's crazy when that moment comes where it's like, am I getting sucked back in?
Yes.
And thrown off of my center and what makes me happy. And I think we all experience that at some point. And one of the things that's really cool about your story is that it started with an internship where you said, I'm going to be a lawyer. And you went home to your mother and you said, I'm going to be a lawyer. And she supported the shit out of you up and you built that career, but now you've found a way to take that to empower other women.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like such a great story because, you said it before about lawyers. Like people just think lawyers are just like, people have negative opinions of lawyers. There's a stigma associated with lawyers, but there's so much good that you could do with that skill set to help others. And you embody that. Thanks. And it's super inspiring because like I said, like earlier, like I was like, I don't really know what you do. Like now I do. And it's just so powerful. And I'm just so glad that I had you on. I have one last question. Okay. And it is... Are you going to trick me? No tricks, I promise. What advice would you give to somebody who is on that journey of finding their purpose?
Oh my goodness, this is such a good question. Be authentic. Remain true to who you are. Don't listen to everybody. If there's one thing that you, like, if you're listening to this full podcast that you take away from this is if you just were to do what it is that's in your heart and follow through with it and put your head down and work so hard, you can achieve it. You don't want to look back 3 years from now and say, I wish I would have done it earlier. And I wish I would have done it earlier my way. Right? Because that's what I'm doing. So take it from me. Like I'm looking back 3 years now and I'm saying, I wish I would have done this. I knew I always had this in my gut, but I wish I would have done it my way and not listened to everybody because I was in this vicious hamster wheel, always finding myself back to the same place. And God was like, when are you going to get out of that cage?
Yeah.
When are you going to get out of there? Right? So my guidance and my advice is you feel like you have this purpose. You feel like you have that drive. Put your head down and go after it. Go do it. And don't worry about what other people are going to say. Be authentic because that will also get you really far and stay true to who you are.
Well, I am personally grateful that you stepped outside of your comfort zone because I wouldn't have had the opportunity to have this conversation. But I would love for you to share with my audience how they can get in touch with you. Alessandra Cortina, Cortina Law Group. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. You guys can find me at The Lawyerista or at Cortina Law Group NY or info@cortinalawgroup.com.
Amazing. Or you can reach out to me. I'd happily connect you with Alessandra. And are you doing other appearances? I can connect you with other podcasters as well.
Sure. I'd love to.
You're a great conversation. But I would like to thank all of you who listened. I do encourage you to follow at the Lawyerista. Look into her, reach out to her. Definitely, if she's probably going to be hosting events now that she's got now that you had that adrenaline rush from the last two.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully this spring.
The spring, there you go. But I encourage everyone to listen to the whole episode. Thank you so much for your support. Please like, rate, review, listen, engage, and help me to continue to build this community. Thank you so much.
Thank you.